And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday Night Live. And it's a big night for many reasons, none less important than the return of Peter J. How you going, Pete?
Okay, mate. Thanks very much for that introduction, and certainly great to be back on the Crowcast after a couple of weeks in lovely Vietnam with Tiger beer going at 70 cents a can, and so it just meant that I only spent $1.40 a day. So it was a really lovely 2 weeks, and good to be back and doing the Crowcast. And what a great time it is to be involved with the Crowcast as well. And I think after all these years of pain and various bits of humiliation and annoyance and all sorts of things, we're actually into a great rollicking season where it's just great to be a Crows fan. And welcome to all you Crows fans out there to the Crowcast Tuesday Night Live edition. Great to have you all along with us. And, of course, our usual panellists for Tuesday evening, Macca, Nikki and Fiend. How are we all?
Well, I'm good, thanks.
Very happy.
Very well, Pete.
Yeah, look, we all have to be happy at what we've been seeing lately. It was great to be back in country in time for the Sunday afternoon clash against the Tigers, and we'll talk a bit more about that as the show rolls on. But in the meantime, we will go to Nikki and find out what's happening around the AFL.
Well, the curse of the hamstrings has struck again. This time, Brandon Parfitt from Geelong, who actually looks to be quite a decent little player. But if anybody actually saw the vision, he went down like he was shot. It was the very high hamstring, and they're saying 8 to 10 weeks that he will be out. We're also, our opponents upcoming have lost a player, Mullet, out of their backline, so that's a little bit of concern for them because he's actually one of their running defenders. He's actually got a broken bone in his hand, so he should only miss 1 or 2 weeks. They're hopeful for that. And Trent Dumont, the South Australian boy, has actually signed an extension with North. I think there were a few rumours around that he might be heading our way, but
was
nothing
surer than he was about to re-sign once we got that rumour that he could possibly be going to Adelaide. That was quite clearly a sign that he was about to just put pen to paper.
It just seems to be that way. All of a sudden the rumours come out and then, oh no, that's not actually true. So it's always quite amusing when that happened. As Varney Magic on the chat just said, Uber? No, I think the boys learned his lesson. We did have a very interesting weekend in terms of results and tips, and mine were crap. Thank you, Sydney. But what kind of got me the most was the Friday night game where a certain something happened with a certain something forward by the name of Toby Green, who decided to do what I think many people expected him to. And the furor that's caused around it, we won't talk about the cockwomble that's Kane Corns with his stupidity, but the fact that the recently retired head of the umpires, who now is at the GWS, is apparently upset that the umpire did his job. And so Wayne Campbell is going to have words with the umpiring department because he thought it wasn't good that that very experienced umpire in Ryan, who they had to convince not to retire because they still wanted him on his book, and he is actually a very good umpire, said to Green, we've been keeping an eye on you because you've been close to the mark for a couple of weeks. And he actually umpired him last week, and he was the one who actually reported Green for the headbutt. And he said, no, you did it. I thought that was actually brilliant umpiring with what he said.
I don't really view either way about this, and I've been surprised that there has been as much furor as there's been. I think that at its highest point, you could say that there's a bit of apprehended bias in the sense that the umpire has given an indication that he's already looking for things from Toby Green. But at the end of the day, you know, the incident was the incident, and whether you've been looking for it or not, he has roundhoused Daniel in the nose.
Yep.
And so the incident was the incident. So I don't necessarily think it needed the furore that it got, but I also don't think the umpire needed to say it. I just think that it was just one of those things that, where umpires are just, they just impose themselves too much on the game. They talk too much. All of those things I don't like. I think just to umpire the game, and that's all you need. So, yeah, I thought it was a bit of a mountain out of a molehill.
The problem there is that they're actually told to do that. And it's from a lot of people who are who weren't umpires at all. So you've got these ex-players coming in saying this is what you need to do. You need to be seen more. Whereas the best umpires, I had really good umpiring coaches when I was umpiring, and you did your job. Yeah, there might have been a bit of back chat because that happens, but you just do your job and you do it well. You explain it to them. That's it.
The other thing too, though, not to be overlooked, is the fact that that umpire actually was requested and did go up to GWS during the off-season and work through a few things with them with regards to rules and interpretation. So he's actually developed a bit of a rapport with a number of the GWS players, and that probably precipitated the more personal conversation that you would otherwise expect between umpire and player. I didn't see anything wrong with it at all, to be honest with you. I don't mind umpires talking to players like that. I mean, it was clear, it was concise, it was factual. The fact that he'd been treading the line was evident anyway. And personally, I didn't see anything wrong with it at all.
But the only thing I would say about it is that would it have been more value before the game to say to Toby Green that they had been keeping exactly what he just said, but say it before the game?
No. It's not. The umpires aren't obligated to warn players. I mean, the player knows where the rules are and where the boundaries are, Macca. And put it this way, the only reason we even knew that went on is because the umpires are mic'd up, which is for TV. And I don't think the fact that the umpires are mic'd up should detract from the way they do their job. And I didn't see anything wrong with it personally.
No, I didn't either. But I just wondered whether it might have been more value done the other way. The other comment I'd like to make is that Kane Corns, who hasn't, I reckon he's made a reasonable start to his media career, but
no, he's just shit.
He's had a terrible start. How can you say that?
No,
he's terrible.
Well,
he's there for clickbait.
Exactly.
That's what he's doing. He's doing exactly what his masters want, which is creating this discussion.
Yeah, and that's I was about to say that, because if you read his article today, you would think that the guy is out of his cotton pick and scone, because he was trying to say that there was no incident, that big roundhouse left was a attempt to spoil. But if he really described the incident correctly, there was an attempt to spoil with the right arm, and that failed. And then after the ball had been marked, the left hand come crunching around into the guy's head. So,
and when you consider that it was probably about 10 times worse than Rory Sloane's on Ebert last year.
Yep.
Correct.
And Kane Corns' attitude towards that incident, he's just a blatant hypocrite, and he's come from the Craig Hutchison school of sensationalism, and he's just, in my view, he's just shown himself to be a person not to be listened to with any sort of hint of credibility in the media.
Well,
it's very interesting that when you see him talking to South Australian media or South Australian audience, he plays up this personality. But when they've actually had him on like AFL Tonight or 360, he's actually been very calm and measured. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, so here's the split personality. You're actually behaving for this particular audience, and then you're playing up the personality
exactly
when you're in South Australia. And I actually think that's kind of poor, because those other shows we see as well. So he's doing himself a disservice by doing those two personalities.
Yeah, but Nicky, I spoke to Graham at a function only a couple of years ago, and I said to Graham, this is after he'd been removed as a permanent partner of Rowies on 5AA, and I said, surely, Graham, you can't believe all that crap that you say. I said, but to me it just seems that if there's a topic that's got a little bit of discussion in it, you take it a totally concrete point of view just to create an argument for the sake of the sensationalism. And he chuckled away and he said, sometimes you're right. And I think,
Sometimes.
I think that's what Kane's done here. Surely,
To be perfectly honest, I would rather spend a half an hour talking about the Essendon drug scam than talking for 30 seconds about Kane Corns. So that's where I'd certainly sit with him, and I think we should move on from him straight away.
Yep,
Nikki, any more news?
Well, there is something else who's going to feature in my Cockwomble nominations, but I think we need to talk about it now. I didn't see the game because my team was actually playing in their game and then I had to rush to the Crows game. But Selwood seemed to object to being tagged by Greenwood, so much so that it was reported by quite a number of people that not only did he complain to the umpires, which he has a right to do because he is the captain, so he's the one who can do it, but he also went and complained to the match steward. Now, or the AFL steward who was there. I've had a look at the laws of the game. I actually wasn't sure whether the captain could do that. It's not in there, but my inkling is that I don't think he actually can. And now he's come out today because they've tried to defend him by going, oh, but he's a very proud man and he doesn't like losing. So he's had to come out and go, I'm not a sore loser. Well, honey, what we saw on the weekend, yeah, you are.
The reality is, Nikki, is that rules don't apply to Joel Selwood, and
Yep.
and there are half a dozen players in the AFL that the rules don't apply to, and we all know who they are.
Yep.
And so that's really par for the course. And whichever way the guy did what was he? High speed driving he was convicted for, or something like
Yep.
and you wouldn't even know about it. And in fact, he made a joke about it. I think I saw a joke made about it today. And, when they had audio of him discussing the last few moments with Pendlebury, he made some flippant comment about his driving conviction. And so Joel Selwood, along with a few others, he can do whatever he likes. And so I think that's probably the end of the story there.
And on that protected part,
Yeah.
we then go and have a look at the match review panel. So Nan Curvis, who decided to elbow her lovely D-Mac in the face, did get 2 matches down to 1.
as I said to
Nat Fife,
Phoenix,
with exactly the same thing, he only gets a fine.
it stole my
But
mind.
isn't it the impact?
I think it might come
Not
down.
a-
Well,
See, this is what you have to get your head around is that they do, in the way that they work this system now is that they penalise the result and not the action.
yeah,
Which
is
and I don't agree with that necessarily. There's some positives to it, but generally speaking, all they do is they look at the impact. Now, DMAC got a nasty whack in the nose. He had to go off. Blah blah blah. And so then that indicates that I think probably was graded at medium impact, whereas Yo bounces straight up. And so it's not even really looked at, and so this whole issue of the result of the action has meant that, and I banged on about this last year, that there's a proliferation of small jumper punches, gut punches, all of these kinds of things because they're seen as low impact and they don't attract any kind, barely any kind of notice, and this is a problem with the match review panel at the moment with the way they grade these.
yeah, and
And-
it has. We did talk about that earlier in the year.
The drunk
it is
on
is a
drunk
problem.
on AFL 360 surprisingly made a good point that throwing your elbow back indiscreetly is possibly one of the lowest acts on a football field. To be honest with you,
Yeah, great.
Oh, yeah. Agreed. I think
And I
all
can-
of us would who played the game.
And if Pfeiffer made contact and Yo goes off, then he probably would have gone. But they don't look at the fact that it's a dog act and that the next time he does it, he could break someone's nose. They don't look at that.
And then one other thing happened this weekend. Hawthorn actually kind of got some good news because they finally got a CEO in. They've been looking for quite a while. And Tracy Gaudry from Athletics Australia, who was actually part of the panel because there's a bit of a bun fight and political fight regarding the Australian Olympic Committee. She was part of the John Coates actual ticket that was going up for a vote this weekend, and all of a sudden she's not available anymore because she is now the CEO of Hawthorn.
it's going to be an interesting battle of wills there between Clarko and their new CEO because she seems like a pretty strong-willed woman, which is obviously a key criteria of that role.
I think they need one.
That club's going to be interesting to watch over the next 12 months.
She made it very clear too that Clarkson reports to her.
Yep.
Yep.
I think she's been given a mandate by the board to keep him in check. I think it's why they took so long to find somebody that was up to the challenge. I guess
Who was
time
the
will
right
tell.
fit?
Well, right fit, wrong fit. The proof will be in the pudding with that one, because at the end of the day, who's more important, a CEO or a premiership coach or triple premiership coach?
Yeah, that is kind of going to be interesting. So after a little discussion we had last week, which, Pete, not sure whether you heard it or not, how do you reckon the coaches on the weekend went that we thought were in the gun a little bit?
Well, interesting. We had Collingwood win, West Coast.
Well, West Coast were back in their flat track bully mode, back at home.
North Melbourne got up.
Just.
Yeah, they all won though, didn't they?
They did, except for Sydney.
Except for Sydney. But the interesting thing with Collingwood is that one of the it's a bit of, I don't know whether it's a praise for Buckley or an indictment of Buckley, in the sense that Buckley abandoned his usual strict regime and told them to go out and enjoy themselves, and they get up and win.
I think it raised more question marks over Geelong more than anything, and I think that result's been coming for Geelong. There's been a number of lesser teams that have pushed them over the last few weeks, and
there has,
and that result has been coming.
Agree with you, Pete.
As has been pointed out, Collingwood actually man up really well against them. They seem to have a bit of the wood on them.
Yeah, they smashed them last year.
Yeah, they do that. They have that same kind of issue with it. And there was a discussion today about ag. We were talking on Big Footy regarding like our game plan, etc., and everything else. And somebody pointed out regarding the way Geelong now structure up, which is a bit different. And for me, they've kind of copied our structure in a way up forward, like we had last year, of aiming for the three talls-ish in a way with Menzel. And him not playing this weekend, they actually put the stats up on AFL 360. With him in the team, they've won the majority of the games. With him out, they look really vulnerable. He's become quite integral to that forward line because Hawkins isn't firing.
No, and Paddy's not, from all accounts, not fit, and Selwood was tagged into submission, or osteitis pubis, I read today, and Selwood's been tagged into to the point where he got 70 possessions. So you take out Dangerfield, you take out Selwood, you take out Menzel, and really there's nothing left. Well, really, actually, you take out the two mids, there's nothing left, and we all knew that. Everyone knew that, and I don't know. I cannot for the life of me work out why teams have not, week in, week out, just sat guys on Selwood like Collingwood did. And surely they'll start doing it now, because you'd just be stupid not to for Geelong.
It makes sense to me. Well. What you said is absolutely right, Pete. I've been flabbergasted that people have allowed both Danger and Selwood to run around like unregistered dogs. And, and amassing, between them something like about 70 possessions, which is crazy, because that gives them real attacking flair, which they don't have if you cut those two guys out. Well, Danger's obviously cut out by injury at the moment, and it was a perfect time to actually sit on Selwood. And it's something that should be done by all sides if you really want to beat Geelong.
Well, you watch if their opponent next week tries to tag Selwood, he'll get about 100 free kicks, I reckon.
Yeah, that's probably right too.
But I think we should just end this little segment on who's top of the ladder.
That'll be us, and it's actually a really good way to Nikki to introduce our review of Sunday afternoon's game. It was a fantastic game. I was fortunate enough to be there, and it was a ripping atmosphere, 51,000 people, not a spare seat in the house. It was absolutely brilliant, great atmosphere, and it was a very, very good opening. It was a really, really tight, tough game of football, and Richmond certainly pressured us incredibly well. They were intense. They had everything running for them, and we struggled with that, and we made a lot of mistakes. And I thought the one thing that stood out to me, and I don't know if anyone picked this up as well, is that I thought we had some real communication problems with our defensive setup. We seem to have Hardigan, Talia and Lever on a few occasions all jump together.
Correct.
Leaving. We lost 2 or 3 goals through, spillages from packs. So it just seemed to me that there was just a bit of a communication problem with those 3 guys, which is unusual. But they certainly straightened that out after quarter time, and of course after quarter time it was just an absolute steamrolling. That was the only thing that really concerned me. Was just we seemed just a little disorganised at the back, which seemed to be the main problem that we had.
Well, Hardigan agrees absolutely with you, because that's exactly what he said on 5AAP.
Oh, really? I didn't hear the interview.
No, well, he actually said that they really did make a bit of a mess of it in the first quarter, that, with 3 up and nobody down, or leaving it for the other guy instead of somebody going up. And he said that the communication was terrible, and they got together at quarter time. They said, come on, guys, let's get real and let's start playing it how we can. And he said, and after that, he said, I think we did a reasonably good job. And, but
a reasonably good job.
Yeah,
4 goals, 1.
Well, he wasn't going to be too cocky, but he did make that confession. Exactly what you said, Pete. You couldn't have put it better.
Well, I'll certainly lay claim to. I sent out a couple of tweets about it during the first quarter, and I certainly didn't hear that Hardigan interview, so I wasn't trying to be facetious or silly when I raised that point. Any other points from the game anyone wants to raise? I mean, there was a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of great stuff, the way that we're playing at the moment. It's very, very hard to pick fault, and I'm really loving the depth at the moment. We seem to cop 2 or 3 injuries here or there, and it just doesn't seem to matter. And also, just while I think about, a really big shout out for Jake Kelly. Unbelievable game, 28 possessions, got absolutely poleaxed right in front of me in the first quarter. And I tell you what, everybody around me just shuddered at the sound of that hit from Rioli, who ended up probably second best at the end of the day. But, a couple of big hits like that, and yet 28 possessions showed some real skill, I would say. We all talk about the Bull and his toughness and his tackling and all of those kinds of things, but there was I thought he showed some good skill, and just showed that he's really coming along as a complete defender for us.
Yeah, it certainly pleased me to see that, because I thought that he was showing a bit going back 2 years ago, and he did lose his spot, and I think last year he had a lot of setback with injury, but he's one of those kids that that will persevere, and he'll give 100%, and he's really starting to put a game together now, and. I just think it'll be very hard for Cheney to get back in while this kid's going as well as he is.
I'm going to be Debbie Downer after having had another look at the game since Sunday night. I don't think any questions have been answered about the Crows, to be honest, Pete. At the end of last season, we got shown to be very vulnerable against high contested ball winning teams. And we were down in contested ball in that first quarter, and we didn't have the ball on our own terms, and we became flustered. We lost composure, as you said. We had communication breakdowns down back, and we were going up and down the lines instead of our lateral movement and our spread and run. To me, as much as we were able to reset and get our head screwed on after quarter time, Richmond don't pose the threat that a couple of other sides are going to pose, and they're not going to ask the same questions for as long as a Western Bulldogs or perhaps a Geelong or a Greater Western Sydney. And I'm still concerned about our ability to play tight contested football for 4 quarters against a committed team that are going to concentrate on winning contested ball.
I don't. The way the AFL is played these days, you're never going to win 4 quarters. It's going to be very, very rare to win 4 quarters.
Yeah, but the game changed after quarter time, Macca. The game. This is the thing. Richmond could not continue to be as rabid at the contest as they were in that first quarter.
True.
And not all teams are going. There are a couple of teams, and I think if you're an opposition coach at the moment and you're looking for a weakness. That's the weakness that stands out. Whenever we're negative, in negative territory on contested ball stats, our uncontested possessions go down as well, and we stop, being able to utilise our quick transition football and our quick spread out of the contest. Our forwards start becoming out of position, and we saw what Richmond could do. I mean, we're only 9 points down at quarter time, but it was 9 scoring shots to 5. And PJ Crows points out the Bulldogs, and I agree. A team like the Bulldogs, who will be hard at the ball all day, is a team and a style of football that I don't know whether we have solved yet.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that is the one team, GWS to some degree, but definitely the Bulldogs, the way they play. It's very hard to argue with what you just said, because that would apply to any team that losing the contested ball. And if we were to lose a contested ball to the Bulldogs, then I would expect that we'd be very lucky to win the game. So it's very hard to argue with what you just said.
Look, I think that all of us, and I think, Finn, I know where you're coming from, and I think anybody that lived through the Crows 2005, the Crows 2006, and the Crows 2012, and then a litany of other finals failures, will not be convinced. And I was positive after the game, of course, because it was a good win. But let's keep it all in perspective. We are an abhorrent finals team. We have, and that doesn't just go for 1 or 2 years. We have been an abhorrent finals team for 20 years. And there, what this is all queuing up to is a massive weight that we will carry into, and I expect that we'll make finals in some way, shape or form. We will carry in a massive weight to the final series, and most Crow supporters will not be convinced until we are a side that can start consistently winning finals. And that's where the test is.
Yeah.
And we have continued, and through generations of players and lists, we have continued to fail at finals. So let's not sugarcoat that.
But it's not even finals this time, Pete, that I'm talking about. It's game style. With 6 rounds in, the Crows have shown that the only time we've been vulnerable is where we haven't won contested ball. And I don't think it's going to take until finals for other teams to come at us really hard in tight. And I think without leading into the next game discussion, but the game against North Melbourne down in Tassie, that's likely to be cold and wet, and North Melbourne going to play a hard, scrappy kind of game, that's going to be a real test for us.
We've only ever played there once, I think it's about...
And lost.
By 7 points to the same team, of course.
No, we lost to Richmond down there. Was it not Richmond? No, it was North down there we lost to.
Yeah, it was North. They lost by 7 points. I think it was either 2014 or 2013.
It was the year Sando got sacked.
Well, that was 2014.
Where he didn't take Rutten.
That's the only time that we've been there, and as you say, we lost to North Melbourne. But I think that means very little. It's just an oval that we don't know much about, but I think it's more about attitude once we're playing the game.
I think it's conditions as well, though, Macca.
Let's not be overly negative. I mean, I understand your argument in respect of teams like the Western Bulldogs, that can apply that kind of pressure. And I know what you're talking about, but to stretch that to North Melbourne at the moment, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think we'll beat North Melbourne comfortably down there. I don't care where we play them. We'll beat them comfortably. What my point is I understand what you're saying. There will be probably 2, 3, maybe 4 teams that will test us throughout the course of the season. I still think, though, that we are comfortably placed for a top 4 finish. If you look at the fact that we've got our 6 wins so far, and you look at the fixture for the rest of the season, we'll play top 4 for sure. But that's when against that kind of quality in a finals environment, that's when we'll be severely tested.
And the other thing I don't want you to build up the Bulldogs as this almighty bloody team that can't be beat either.
They're vulnerable.
They've already been beaten twice this year by other sides, and so they've shown that they're not capable of doing it for a whole game too, Phoenix. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, but as I said before, it's not about who's vulnerable, who's not. It's about opposing game styles. And whilst we've shown different looks and won in different ways, the consistent theme is that when we've been up in contested ball, we've been able to score very efficiently and therefore put a lot of scoreboard pressure on because we've been able to score very quickly with minimal possessions. And I'm just very interested to see when the grounds get wet and the games get tight and other teams try to really rough us up inside the contest and shake our composure. A couple of things happen. We saw it in the first quarter. We lose our lateral movement, we lose our composure, we start kicking up and down lines, and our forward line isn't as efficient because the ball's not coming in there so nicely. So, and all those factors are very key elements of our high-scoring game plan. So we need to see what's going to happen when, as I said, the ground's wet, the weather's cold, the ball's slippery, the other team are up for the contest because they know that's the only way they're going to win. Don't think we will ever see a bloody shootout for the rest of this season against the Crows. It will not happen. No team will come with a plan to try and outscore us. Every team is going to come with a plan to limit our scoring. And that means that we're going to have to win ugly a lot of the time. And I'm not saying that we can't. It's just that I haven't seen evidence of it yet. We haven't had the opportunity to see us in those circumstances. And I think, irrespective of North's talent and current position on the ladder, I think the circumstances, a 6-zip street and beating a fellow contender last week, together with a very different set of conditions at Tasmania, will present an interesting challenge, and it'll be good to see how we go against that sort of a team in those sort of conditions.
Well, for me, Phoenix, we were down in contested ball in that first quarter, and so you actually saw us having to fight back because even though Richmond are a bit poo at times, and they're, as we talked about last week, they're not as good as how they had been built up, they still have some decent contested ball winners in that team, and we were able to really hunt at them and get it turned around. So we've seen a bit of that in games already.
What about, though, is it possible to isolate this, though, to the starts? Because, terrible start against Hawthorn, terrible start against Port, terrible start against Richmond. I can't remember GWS. Was that a terrible start? I can't remember.
Yes, it was. If I remember,
4 of 6 first quarters we've lost.
4 of 6 we've stunk in the first quarter. So is that, that surely that's where the hint is? And I don't know the answer, but that seems to be the problem in first quarters for some reason.
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying, Pikey's a genius, he reset us at quarter time. Well, he did make a couple of adjustments, but the biggest change was we just lifted our intensity.
Yeah, and that's pleasing.
And that's a player-driven thing. That's not the coach can point it out, look, you're down in contested ball, you don't look as hard at the contest as you should be, pick it up sort of thing. But you don't need to be a genius to point that out to a bunch of people. And Richmond obviously don't run very deep in their midfield rotations. So even a midfield like Collingwood is going to trouble us, a midfield like Melbourne is going to trouble us. That's not to say I think we'll have trouble beating those teams necessarily, but we're going to have to win whilst sharing a reasonable amount of contested ball in those circumstances, and that's what I'm waiting to see.
Well, I'm nowhere near as negative as you are about it.
I'm not being negative. I'm playing devil's advocate. I think we're very hard to beat in all conditions. I'm not being negative, Macca, but we have to be balanced about this if the lid stays on, and this is just one area that I'm yet to be convinced, simply because the evidence is up until now over the past couple of seasons, as Peter pointed out, in big games is overwhelming. It's our weakness.
But I do hope the other sides come at us as hard as you say every week, because all that will do is condition us to expect that every week, and for us to expect to have to increase our output every week, and that will only prepare us better for the finals.
I agree.
Can I just ask a question? Is Pikey that much of a genius? I'm reading that, he's the reset king and all this kind of stuff, and it just looks to me like we're just not intense when we start. And at quarter time, as you say, it's self-driven, and they start winning the ball back at him. I don't know, he's being made out to be some kind of master scientist who delivers some kind of magic, structure or whatever you want to call it. Just still looks like a game of footy to me, and
we were still intent. there was still intent going on in that first quarter. I mean, we were hunting in packs at them. We were at their face.
Well, what exactly? So my question is, that's fair enough, fair comment. What exactly did the coach do at quarter time in all of those 4 games that inverted commas reset the side?
Well, certainly in the last game, the big thing that he did was freed up Lever across half back after quarter time. Lever became an intercepting champion across half back. But as I said, Pete, and you're dead set right, it was a lift in intensity that got us back into the game. It wasn't any major. I think we probably jigged around our midfield, our centre stoppage positioning a little bit, because in the first quarter they tended to be roving a bit off source, and that certainly dried up after quarter time. But again, that's whoever the midfield coach's role is. Pikey didn't probably have much input into that.
We also didn't. We changed up how we normally bring it out of halfback once we get the intercept because of where they were blocking. So we were actually delivering it differently towards our forwards, and our forwards were working differently coming up as well to counter where Richmond were putting the bulk of their players.
Yeah, I don't think Pike makes any major changes. But what he does,
just tweaking.
Exactly. He just has little tweaks here and there with players playing slightly different roles that are probably not transparent to people like who watch it as casually as we do compared to them. It's all about each player playing a role. And one thing about it, Pike is not confused in his mind what the game plan is that he wants played. So, and if it's not being played quite to that, he just tweaks it around till he gets what he wants.
Well, more importantly,
but when he tweaks it around with what? What did he do?
Well, we just gave you 3 or 4 examples, Pete. I mean, I think the thing that I've noticed about Pike's coaching is this, and Mackie, you touched on it, but I think it goes a bit deeper than that. It's not only that he has a very clear picture of what the game plan is, but the communication to the players is also very concise. I think the players have a very clear understanding of what's supposed to be going on because they mention it all the time. And I think the one thing that I saw that, if you recall, in the first 4 rounds last year, we were running aggressively off half back, and we were handballing aggressively off half back, and at times what we were doing is turning the ball over and getting done out the back. If you watch the game against Richmond, there were those same aggressive chains of handball cutting through the corridor, drawing players and being very, very adventurous and aggressive. And I think what Pike's been able to do is instill a level of confidence in the players about attempting those handballs again. But he's also changed the way our defence lines up behind that, so that we don't get cut off so much at the pass and then done over the back.
That's a very good point there, because we did used to get burnt on that last year, and we're not getting burnt on it this year.
Happy with that as being a reasonable contribution, obviously, from the coach. But the examples that you gave, I don't think that they were, dramatic enough influences that change the course of the game to such a dramatic extent.
No, but what they
you don't
do
think
say...
Lever cutting off you don't think Lever having a mountain of intercept marks across
who was he on? I mean, it didn't look to me in the first quarter to be matched up on anyone in particular.
Well, he was matched up because in the second quarter we put one back. We put an extra back, which freed him up.
I didn't notice him standing on any. I didn't notice him standing specifically on an opponent.
They all kept going up. It was really hard to try and figure out who was actually on.
You're talking about 100. You're talking about 100-point turnaround. I just don't know that the coach has that. I think that's player driven. I don't think the coach has that much influence.
I don't think the coach can not have an influence in a 100-point turnaround, Pete. I think it's
not as much. That's fine, but not as much credit as he's been given. That he resets the whole side.
No doubt, I agree.
This thing that he resets the whole side. He reset, and we're talking about 4 games. So are we saying he's done it in all of those 4 games?
But the reset might be nothing more than getting them to play what the game plan is meant to be.
Exactly, Macca. That is a really good point. Pointing out the areas that they're not adhering to game structure. He does other things too, Pete. and whether it's again things that he's directed the players to do, or whether it's the line coaches, but noticeably there are times when we put a player running in off the back of the square, and we don't do it all the time, but there are times during the game, key times during the game when we have a bloke running off the back of the square. There are key times where we have our wings starting on defensive side on the back of the square. I don't know whether you've noticed that as well.
Yeah.
We do get behind the ball to try and stop momentum, and it was very clear to me that... because, let's face it, the way football's played these days, you don't play 6-on-6 down back, but people have assigned roles down back. And it was very clear to me that Lever's role changed in that second quarter.
And if you actually want to see an example of what our coaching staff is like, the clip out of the Crow show that has been put up this week, where you had Teague meeting with Nida, going over his game against Essendon. And I found that really interesting in how negative Knight was about his own game and the reinforcement that Teague was doing in there of they wanting the players to take risks, to trust themselves, to go for those kind of kicks. And we actually saw that in the game. So you had what I talked about on Sunday night, which was my favourite play of the game, which started with Kelly in the back line, winning the ball off of Revolt, and just that pass up we did, the short kick to Tex on the lead, who turned and saw Miller wide open, and that kick is an insane kick that he did to get to Miller free, which then also meant that Lynch was free in the goal square, and beautiful pass in there. But we also had the case of, and it didn't quite work out, and they did get a goal out of it, of Brown taking the ball across and kicking across defence to Miller once again running into space, and he only just missed the ball. But I actually reckon from watching what Teague was, how he was talking, that I think other coaches would probably have a go at Brown if he was in another club of not wanting to take that kick. I get the feeling that even though it didn't come off and they got a goal, I'm pretty sure he's not going to get told off by the coaches. He's actually probably going to say, no, not bad. We want you to take those risks.
I think, though, don't misunderstand that I'm in any way levelling criticism at the coaching team. I'm not doing that at all. I'm not criticising Don Pike because he's obviously doing a good job. But all I'm suggesting is that there seems to be this, this perception that he is
that he's the instigator.
That we just can't play football for a quarter, and all of a sudden he just does some, click of the fingers and I don't know what. As it said, resets, and he is then 110% responsible for the fact that the whole team, that massive turnaround that we saw at quarter time, and that we've seen in 4 games.
I think
anybody who's ever coached,
I think Macca nailed it in terms of they've obviously got some fairly clear measures in terms of key indicators that they can show to players to tell them what they're not doing, and we've obviously got clear ways of playing, and you only have to look. There was a period during that first quarter where for the whole first quarter I can't remember us trying to switch the ball once. We kept going up and down the line, up and down the line, up and down the line. Now, there was a very clear difference between how we played in that first quarter in terms of defensive transition and how we played after that, which was quick lateral movement, spread wide, and we actually started spreading. We played very, very wide, and then we'd cut back into the corridor. And that passage that you talked about, Nikki, that started with Jake Kelly, that kick from Brodie Smith to Tex is a kick that we weren't taking in that first quarter. Brodie Smith wouldn't have taken that kick in that first quarter. And yes, it takes Tex to take the mark, but Smith wouldn't have even looked there. He would have gone back and kicked long down the line. And that's maybe where things were changed, where he perhaps got us to hit up a little bit shorter and then get over the press that way. I think you're a bit right, Pete. I think it's overstated the amount of influence that Pike has. But I certainly think the training that we've done over the off-season and the drilling that he does during the week has left a very clear set of messages to players about how we're supposed to be playing. And I think he's good enough to be able to have measures in place that he can very clearly communicate with players what needs to change when that plan isn't working.
Don't disagree with any of that at all. I think that's pretty well summed up, I think.
He has actually himself mentioned that a lot of times when people have said, oh, you what did you do? And he said, well, it wasn't me. It was the players actually recognised something and they fixed it.
Yeah.
So okay, whilst at that moment it was the players, but as Phoenix just said, it is actually Pike putting those structures in place and the other coaches during training to give them the confidence to do that and the trust to do that. And so it is the best coach and athlete always have this beautiful give and take and trust between them.
Sure. Moving on from the coach just for a second, I just want to isolate one particular player, and I thought that the game from Sam Jacobs on Sunday afternoon, 26 possessions, 50 hit-outs, quite clearly the best game that he has ever had for the Adelaide Crows. I would almost venture to suggest one of the great games by a ruckman in modern times. I mean, it was 26 possessions, 50 hit-outs. When have we seen that from a ruckman in the last, say, 5 to 10 years?
I don't know. Let's have a look at Sean Wren's numbers.
At whose numbers?
Sean Wren.
Rennie's the player like
He
that
was
every
a
week.
freak.
Now you're talking sort of like 25 odd years ago.
Yeah, but you
over
said
20 years
modern
ago.
era. When does that start?
The modern era. In the last 10 years.
Last 10 years, okay.
Last 10 years.
You're right.
He's not as good as Rennie. I'm not suggesting that, but it's one of the great games from modern ruckman.
Well, it's the sort of game that you'd see from Goldsmith at his best, that we've seen a couple of times from Max Gawn. Jared Rufford's not really a ruckman, but
he's not
influential like that. I mean, you're right. It's how the dominant ruckman of the moment play, and you'd have to say that he'd be the dominant ruckman at the moment with Max Gawn out of the competition.
Did any of those guys take a bounce, though, at any point?
I love that.
No, probably not.
I still think that was one of the loudest cheers of the night was when he took that running bounce. It's just the whole crowd just went nuts.
Yeah, I actually read or heard, I think I read that said that he made a deliberate effort to, once his rucking duties in any incident were finished, he tried to occupy the centre of the grounds, become a link man. And he does have this reputation that they call him tall mid. Is it big mid or tall mid?
Yeah, tall mid.
Tall mid.
Yeah, tall mid. Yeah, and he certainly lived up to that this week.
If I could work out how to create a poll, I'm going to do a poll on Twitter for this as to whether we think that that's one of the best games in the last 10 years by a ruckman. And I might have a look at it through the week.
I'll put it up after the cast on.
We'll put it up
AFL
after the cast, mate.
Crowcast,
yeah. Do it.
I was going to say, I like Jared Waitley's comment on AFL 360 last night, where he mentioned that Sean Jacobs, Source Jacobs, asked a number of questions of the apparent number one ruckman in the competition, and the number one ruckman in the competition was found wanting in each of them. He went forward, he went back, as you say, he became a link. Nankervis was nowhere to be seen in any of those, and outpointed him in the ruck.
The only thing I disagree with about what Waitley said was I don't reckon Nankervis was the number one ruckman in the game.
No, that was based on champion data ratings.
Which tells you exactly the fact that Nankervis is rated number one, and leading into this game, Source was ranked number 18.
Yeah.
It tells you that stats don't tell the full story, and you can't rely on them.
In Waitley's defence, he had basically been pumping up Source's tyres.
Yeah,
and every other commentator around was chopping him down with that set of statistics.
Correct,
so Waitley
you are
was
right.
basically saying, well, here you go. The supposed number one in ruckman in the competition just got his pants pulled down.
And Jacobs was also manned up a couple of times against Grigg. We brought him on and they hadn't managed to get Nankervis back. Now, Grigg then became an extra midfielder, but I thought because of what Source was doing in the middle of the ground, Grigg had to be accountable to him.
Yeah, and Grigg just wasn't playing near him.
Yeah, but if you'd been offered before the game a choice between Nankervis or the Collingwood ruckman, I'd take the Collingwood boy every time.
Oh, Brady Grundy, yeah, I agree.
Except he does stupid shit.
No, he's still young though, Nick.
I know he does, but he does about 2 of them really, really, really basic, stupid things every game. He's got to fix that up.
That's what they call being a ruckman does.
I've had the pleasure of seeing Brady Grundy play from junior years, and I'll tell you what, he's an absolute gun, and I wish he was playing for us.
I agree.
He's still developing.
Yeah, so Scorpus, just for you, Pete, the Scorpus actually put some stuff up in the chat. So Max Gawn last year in round 12, he had 31 hit-outs, 3 goals, 4 clearances and 27 touches. And then in round 3 this year, 63 hit-outs, 2 goals, 18 touches, 8 clearances and 4 contested marks. That wasn't bad.
Both from Max Gawn?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Gawn is a very good ruckman.
Let's not forget that Source won Game of Crows this week with 8 inside 50s.
Jeez, 8 inside 50s as well.
Yeah,
and
Crikey.
nobody picked him.
Yeah, well, who would?
That's fair. But that comes back in line with what he was saying about deliberately positioning himself in the centre of the ground, become a link man.
Mm. All right, probably as we move towards the end of the show, we've taken a bit of time there to chat about the Richmond game, but it was all good stuff. Do you want to have a look at the Cockwomble of the week, or do you want to go to North?
No, let's go Cockwomble and then North, eh?
Okay, do it.
There's some good ones.
You guys won't hear this, but it's playing. Yeah, I'll put my headphones next to my mic. Righto, Nikki, go on.
Well, I'm going to start with the St Kilda Football Club, who have taken the decision that from now on they have to check the banner before it actually gets put up by the cheer squad. I quite liked their banner where they thanked Hawthorn for the first round pick that they're going to get. That was a cheeky little thing, but God, it was funny. But St Kilda was just gone, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that, was kind of bad. So, I mean, come on, that's what the banners used to be. They used to be a bit of fun and having a go at the opposition, and that was bloody clever.
But Nicky, the club they hadn't been even checking the banners. They didn't even know, and I think that's probably a little bit of a condemnation of somebody at the club, that they should at least know what they're going to say.
Yep, so I thought there's a nomination for that club. But then also St Kilda, Josh Bruce and Mason Cox Mason Cox, we'll forgive him slightly because, you know, he's come from the US and he got a little bit excited and he really shouldn't have played on. But Bruce in the goal square kicking into the goalpost, probably not the smartest of moves from him.
That's got to be physically impossible. I can't work out how he did it.
He tried to kick it out of the ground and it didn't quite work. To be fair, I could also nominate the full forward from my team on the weekend who actually, she managed to drop the ball completely and not even get a foot on it, running into the open goal on her own. So, well done, Bessa. We had to find her for it. So she was a bit of a cockwomble. I was thinking Caden Corns probably gets a good nomination for his little bit of stupidity. We need to do it at least once a year.
He deserves it.
There was a tweet from Kevin Bartlett today, and I assume he was talking about somebody from SEN, given that's where he does all of his work. And I think it was someone Wilden, that I think Paul Wilden. That,
okay. Don't know the name.
Tweeted about the Adelaide, the start of Adelaide season. Yeah, all very well, but in inverted commas, who have they played?
Everybody below them.
Well,
only second, fourth, and fifth.
Let's not forget that Bartlett, up until 3 days ago, was saying that Richmond could go through undefeated. I'm having another crack at Triple M.
Yep.
Remembering that Triple M, in their wisdom, are doing a Crows-related Monday night podcast called The Crows Cast. I had the displeasure of listening to Jars and Louis, I think, on Monday night. And now they have a segment called The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. So a clear rip-off of Big Footy. And plus they had an interview with Lairdy, and one of the questions to Lairdy, and I've heard them ask this question of a couple of Adelaide players now, is what's the best sledge? Now, clearly...
No.
Oh,
Really?
you're kidding.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. Now, clearly, Louis and
They're
Jars, you
listening.
guys are listening.
disgraceful.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, so thank you very, very much. However, you guys do this as a full-time job, and I'm sure your producer does as well. Get around the table, have a bit of a brainstorm sesh, get the white paper out and the whiteboard and the big thick texters, or crayons for Jars, and come up with some original ideas, because it's just getting a bit old now.
Oh, and Scorpus has just added in that the thing that just makes my week is Port being told that Gold Coast will be wearing their red jumper, just like they always have every time they play Port.
That's gold. That's gold.
Magnificent.
No clash.
Magnificent.
Do we have a winner?
I was going to go with Port for that, because that's stupidity regarding it, but nah, Triple M.
Triple M.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely Triple M.
No stealing our questions, and plus,
Pathetic.
Lairdy likes us best, I bet you.
Yeah, I've noticed that their interviewing technique has started to replicate ours quite substantially. It's gotten a lot more lighthearted. They're going through backstory, and now they've brought up the sledge. It's like, come on, fellas, seriously.
That's pathetic.
If they
All right.
start asking about the sleep room, and then we really know if they've copied it.
That's right.
As we push to the hour mark, we've got a game against North Melbourne on the weekend down in Tasmania. Always a little bit tricky down there, but I think we'll win comfortably. I don't think they have the talent or the system to get anywhere near us. And I'm not saying that through arrogance or overconfidence. I just don't think that they have the side that, and they have a couple of injuries as well. So I would say that they won't trouble us on the weekend. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, they're not a particularly quick midfield, and even though it will get a bit wet and slippery, I still think that's our advantage, and they definitely don't have the defence to counter. They've got some good forwards, but it's not been cohesive from what I've seen this year yet.
One thought that it did go through my mind. Do you think they'll pay the two ruckman this week, given the fact that Sauce is being rucking so well at the moment?
Well, Goldstein's been flat out of form, so
Yeah.
they should definitely play that young fella.
Bruce.
Yeah.
He's good,
He's looking
but
good.
he gets tired. He doesn't have the tank. So if we bring that energy game that we have and keep at them, we'll hopefully tire him out as well.
I'm staying true to my... Sorry, go on, Mako.
I was going to say, I'd like to start well because, with our games with North Melbourne, we usually start pretty ordinary and we get North Melbourne into the game and we drag it out and then we finally usually get them at the end. And I really just would like to see us play properly, play our game correctly right from the word go. Because if we did that, then I think we would win by a fair margin. But I've got this horrible gut feeling, having watched us play some of the games against North Melbourne, that we won't start that good and we'll keep them in the game and then eventually struggle to the line. So I hope it's not that.
I'm going to stick with my earlier narrative. I think this is a danger game for the Crows. I think we've been up for the first 6 weeks. We've beat... I think we built for the Richmond game, given that they were a fellow undefeated team. Cold, wet, miserable down in Tassie, an unheralded opponent who will play tight, tough inside football. I think we'll win, but I don't think we'll have it all our own way, and I think it'll be only in the last quarter that we pull away and win by 3 or 4.
That's my line.
Fair enough, Fiend. All right, that just about takes us out this evening. Any saved rounds from anyone?
No, I'm done.
Nope. All done?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Great to have you all along. It was fantastic to be back on the Crowcast. Great to be chatting again with the guys, Mac and Nicky and Phoenix. Appreciate your input, guys. And we will catch you all next week on Sunday for the post-match and also then Tuesday Night Live on...
Don't forget Scorpus' preview Thursday.
Sorry, Scorpus' preview on Thursday night as well.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at AFL Crowcast. And there may or may not be a main break show, so stay tuned. See you guys.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye now.
He kept us to an hour.
Yeah, bye all.
See